Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's PAM Town Hall Forum, New Ways of Worshiping During COVID-19. So this week, our town hall will be moderated, or the first half of it will be moderated by our one of our board members, Karrie Rushing from Greenville, North Carolina, and she's going to chat with you a little bit about personal well-being and self-care while all of us are basically cooped up for the moment, and that can be a challenge. And then we're going to welcome special guests Kirsten Foyles and Terri Sinclair. Kirsten is an attorney in Pinehurst, North Carolina. She's also the director of children's music at Community Presbyterian Church in Pinehurst. And Terri Sinclair is a professor of music at Coastal Carolina University and also happens to be director of music at Community Presbyterian Church in Pinehurst. We're very happy to have you all today. During Karrie's segment, you will have the opportunity to share some of your experiences and ideas and thoughts. And one way you can do that is by raising your hand. You should see that control on your browser window. And when the time comes to share, I will call on you and unmute you, and you can share your thoughts with Karrie and have the discussion continue. Kirsten and Terri will be discussing copyright law issues for streaming worship and broadcasting copyrighted material and different things like that. They will not be taking questions. They will be answering questions from last week's Town Hall Forum and also some additional questions they have received throughout the week. Some of these questions are a little bit more complicated and require a little bit of research to answer. So they have a number of topics to discuss that hopefully will be helpful to all of you. And so without further ado, I would like to welcome Karrie Rushing.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be with you, even if we can't all actually be together. These times are very strange in that we are finding new ways to connect virtually and from a distance. And I've heard it said that it's so important to maybe not use the term social distancing, but rather physical distancing, because now more than ever, it's important to find ways to socially connect. So I want to give you just a second this time is going to be time to sort of share things that are working for you. Musicians, we are used to being with each other, to work in groups and to be collaborative. And so these are times of high anxiety, depression even, just uncertainty. And so I would love to hear from you what's working for you. And so I'm going to give you a moment to raise your hand to think about that as we open in prayer. Let us pray. O God of life, we see the new buds of spring and hear the songs of the birds and know that you are at work in the world. Remind us, Lord, that you are also at work in us, in all of our uncertainties and even in our growing pains. Open our hearts and our minds to your peace and your everlasting presence. Amen. Do we have anybody who is interested in sharing some things that are working for you at home?
So it looks like we have a few hands raised. We'll start with Katie Boardman. I have unmuted you, Katie. Feel free to share.
Hey there, from Cooperstown, New York. I found that kind of checking in with people by email, especially on Thursday nights when we're usually practicing or rehearsing, or Sunday mornings, has been really helpful to us all. We're having trouble knowing what day of the week it is because we're not there on Sundays. So that's just been a little thing that has been nice, just to stay in touch, especially the older members of the choir.
Thank you, Katie.
Okay, and Charlie Frost.
Hey, Charlie.
And Charlie, if you'll unmute yourself, you're ready to go.
Oh, okay. Charlie Frost from Beaufort, South Carolina. One thing that's helped me as a staff person is we have met weekly as a staff in person, but only about 6 or 7 of us spread out all over Fellowship Hall to plan worship, and then come together on Fridays to record worship, pre-record worship. And in between, we have messages from pastors and from other staff sending to one another for encouragement and support. And that's been really helpful. Our choir someone in our choir started a Facebook page for a group, and that's been really good too, to stay in touch. That's been helpful both personally and as a group.
Thanks, Charlie. We did that too, right when all this started and we realized we weren't going to be together. We started a Facebook group just for our music ministry. And we have found that has been a really good source of connection, both for sharing music and general silliness that we're missing in our togetherness, in our lack of togetherness that we're used to.
Okay.
Andrew, who's next?
Yes, and looks like Joni Brown has her hand raised. Joni, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
I don't think I had my hand raised, but I will just say that I've been really struggling this weekend, and especially yesterday when it was time for a choir rehearsal before church, and I was at home. I'm just really having a hard time. And so all this is really helpful to me. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think we all sort of kind of go through these periods of sometimes we feel super proactive and we feel like, all right, I'm finding my rhythm. I think I got this. And then something just hits us. I got a notification on my phone that I had forgotten to take something off my calendar, an event that we were supposed to do together as a group, and that wasn't happening, obviously. And it was kind of a gut punch. And those things that kind of take us by surprise can be a struggle. We're all definitely in that together.
Thank you.
And we have Jane Kane. Jane, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Nobody's mentioned Zoom yet. We've had choir chats via Zoom, and not everybody's on Facebook.
Right.
So that's an important thing to remember. Our staff has a daily check-in by Zoom. It's a pretty large staff. There's 16 or 17 of us. And it's very short, but it's a chance to see everybody's face and see what everybody's working on and so forth. Our pastor is very proactive with the church's Facebook page, and he wants a different kind of post to go out no less and no more than 3 times a day. So we have a sign up genius where we sign up that we're going to post either something inspirational or funny or musical or helpful photos, whatever. And that's really coming up on people's Facebook pages and kind of keeping the church connected with them and kind of in their face a little bit in hopefully a good way. So I think that's kind of creative.
That's good. That's good. You're getting enough content out there without overwhelming people with all that. And absolutely, Zoom is a great tool.
Okay, and we have Chi Chen Wolbrink. Chi, you are unmuted. If you'll unmute yourself.
Yes. Well, talking about Zoom, we feel like because my music ministry have a 4 group, which is a children choir, adult choir, then press team, and also the handbell. But I kind of that everybody is that a press team and with a choir to be together is because we normally share the kind of combined service and with a like a blending music style. And then I thought that is a very good time for everyone to know each other. And also every time, because I have a 5-section singers from the state university, and then they are also went home and then stuck at home and is not coming back until the end of the semester. So I signed up, each one has a host time, and each Wednesday, and we have a fun topic and introduce the new song or old song, and everyone can sing together through the Zoom, and even just a few seconds kind of delayed. And then I encouraged every host pick their music, and then also storytelling, why he likes this music and what is meant to him or her, and also what is the meaning in the theology too, and if they are able. So it's kind of helping everyone to kind of fulfill a lot of interesting in background, because we are so lacking of the talking about the storytelling, because we are so concise to want to get done and before the Sunday, and kind of lacking of that. And so I thought of this is really a good time to tell in the background of the songs or hymns.
That's a great idea. In addition, before we move on to the next person, Andrew, in addition to ways that we're connecting with our membership and our choir, this is also a time to talk about things that are working for you personally, things that are good ways to set boundaries. I feel like I'm working all the time and I'm always on the clock, even more so than usual. And I'm imagining that you also feel the same way. We just never know what is going to be needed at any given time, and we want to do whatever we can to help. But sometimes that can be emotionally really draining. So what are things that you personally have found to help yourself as well?
Okay, so we have we have several hands raised now. I think Philip Newton was first. Philip, you're unmuted. If you'll unmute yourself, you can go.
Hi, Philip.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. When my staff meeting just ended a few minutes ago, and they knew I was headed to this webinar, they asked me to ask a specific question about Zoom bombing. I don't know if there are people out there who've heard about this, but apparently there are people who are able to find out about Zoom meetings, and then they jump into them and they say sacrilegious things. So there's Zoom bombing out there, and I'm wondering if there's any way we can protect ourselves from that.
I have heard about that. They can post explicit photographs, overlay audio, all kinds of things that some hackers are able to do. And I have heard of several churches that has happened to. That is, the technology side of it is not my area of expertise, and so I can't answer that question, but perhaps somebody else may be able to.
So in general, this is Andrew Perkins, whom you can't see. Something you'll want to think about is to protect the Zoom link. So think about how you're distributing the link to worship or the choir rehearsal or whatever it is. So for example, avoid putting it on the website, which is public. Even sometimes email. Sometimes emails aren't 100% secure. If there is a way to make the meeting password protected, that's something else you can do, and give the password only to those who are involved in the meeting, so random people can't come on and say horrible things or something like that. So those are just some things that I think of offhand to think about.
Thanks, Andrew.
And let's see, I believe we had someone else had their hand up. John Sal. Hey, John.
Hey, John.
Hi, Karrie, my friends. So when we're thinking about ways to also care well for our own spiritual health and physical health right now. I know that in our household there are a whole bunch of new realities in these weeks with students of a lot of different ages trying to do all their work from home and parents trying to do work from home. So it means a lot of online time, and for all of us, that's actually probably not the best mode we work in the first place, maybe anyway. So we've made a point that individually, everybody has, just like during their real live work or school day, some kind of physical activity that's built into the day. So I usually walk to work because I'm fortunate to live quite close. And so even on the days when I'm at home, now we're making sure that, you know, that me included, but that everybody gets some time outside. And we're fortunate to live also in a neighborhood where that's not too hard to accomplish and to maintain some social distance. But we've also made a point of taking some walks together, which has been quite nice, and making sure that we're also sharing some of the load of what is suddenly needed to also keep up our household in a way where everyone is home all the time. And so I know that for me, there are some changes in my prayer and reading patterns right now because the schedule of the day has shifted, and that's been a hard transition. But a lot of the other physical transitions at home have been just I guess a reminder for myself, sometimes from family or sometimes for myself, from myself, to be also outside of the walls and also off of a screen and outdoors every day, at least a little bit if I can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John.
Okay, and now we're going to go to Parks Williams.
Hi, Parks.
Parks, you are unmuted if you would like to go ahead. Well, maybe not. We lost Parks for the moment, but we'll come back to we'll come back to Parks. I'll put your hand down, Parks. You can raise your hand again, and I'll call on you again. We'll go to Lisa Dillard now.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi. I wanted to make sure everybody knows about the app called Insight Timer. It's a meditation app that is free. And in addition to exercise, being outside, playing with my dogs, you can use this app, and it just has thousands of meditations of different forms. Some of them are very spiritual and prayer minded. You can search by topic. It's just great. And like I said, free.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and and back to Charlie Frost again. Go ahead, Charlie.
I found that my devotion time has become more consistent and better quality. Usually I'm doing it in the car on the way to my church, but it's great to just take time. And then on a physical level, I do a lot of exercising regularly, and I'm finding I'm able to do more getting out on the bike 3 or 4 times a week, and maybe just riding 20 miles or 25 miles, but that time is just so precious in nature, and it really is a good relaxing. But exercising has helped me a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have anybody else, Andrew?
Well, we had a couple of questions that were typed. So this first one, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, Leah. I'm going to butcher your last name, but it's from Leah Herashevek, maybe. What guidelines are you going by in terms of practice, worship recording with other musicians, etc., for those who are under shelter-in-place orders? In other words, have you stopped all in-person collaboration?
I can speak to what we're doing at First Presbyterian Church in Greenville, North Carolina. We kind of saw the writing on the wall that shelter in place was coming soon. And so we pre-recorded a lot of music, hymns, that kind of thing ahead of time. So we had it in the hopper. And at this point, for all intents and purposes, our church building is closed. Today I had to come up because my internet at home was spotty because my kids are doing work just like everybody else's kids. And I printed off an essential personnel letter just in case. We are doing all of our things individually and then uploading videos to Microsoft Teams for editing into a worship service. That's what we're doing. There are lots of other ways that people are making it work.
Okay, and there was one more question. There was a clarification asked, and I'll unmute Lisa for this one. Lisa, was that app you mentioned Insight Timer, spelled INSIGHT Timer? Is that what it was?
Yes,
Okay.
2 words.
Okay, Insight Timer. Okay, there we go. All right, thank you very much. And so now we have Susan Mazzara. Susan, go ahead.
Very good. Pronunciation of the last name, it's a hard one.
Thank you very much.
I'm a bivocational solo pastor of a small church. And in the best of times, music particularly is challenging. We don't have any church musicians at all. And so I have a very different experience, and I'm feeling myself having a very different perspective from a lot of the folks that we've heard from on the call. I don't have more time, for self-care. I am just really pressed right now. So my focus has been on remembering to take Sabbath. Yesterday afternoon was really my first Sabbath in weeks. And it was lovely to be able to nap and to be able to take a walk and just read and just, do absolutely nothing connected with church or my secular job. And the other thing is that I'm also a meditation teacher. So I just want to reiterate what the use of meditation apps like Insight Timer, and there are lots of others, but just for me, taking time to be still and be quiet and be meditative has been very crucial to my own self-care in these times. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, I think that's all we have for now.
Okay, thank you all so much for sharing with us. And I want to remind everybody about if you're on Facebook, the PAM Connect page is a great place to keep some of these conversations going. That's one of the reasons why we're there, is to connect with one another. It's right there in the name. It's not just for professional purposes, though that is a wonderful aspect of that group, but reach out to one another, continue these kinds of conversations, whatever it is that you find helpful. So thanks so much for joining me for this part of the conversation today. And at this time, I'm gonna toss it over to Kirsten and Terri. So thanks so much.
Wow, well, I tell you, that was a wonderful conversation, and it's really a beautiful thing when you realize that we're all in the same boat together and facing the same challenges. And so thank you for sharing your thoughts. We would have chimed in, but we were muted. But we're with you now. And so I'd be curious to know, I know we can't really talk back and forth, but I never even knew what Zoom was before all this came around. So I'm curious how many of you that was new for you. But actually, for clarification, I'm no longer at Coastal Carolina University. I'm at Sandhills Community College, but we're all online, so I'm having to learn all this stuff as we go. And I'm a choral vocal person, so trying to have a choral rehearsal via Zoom is really an adventure because of that couple of seconds delay. So just want you to know, I'm sure you know, we can so relate with everything you guys just said. So thank you for sharing. So now we'll transition to talking about copyright law as it applies in this COVID-19 era.
As I was joking with Terry before we went on, we just learned how to calm ourselves, and now we're about to like stress you out with all of this copyright stuff. So hopefully we can give you the answers that you're looking for and keep that stress level low.
Absolutely. Hopefully you can see that we are practicing, you know, that social distancing, what Andrew called it something different, but
physical distancing.
Thank you. But anyway, you know, we all know that COVID-19 and its ensuing restrictions have prohibited many of us from meeting together physically for worship. And so therefore, you know, we're being forced to explore the concept of online worship services, and many of us for the first time. And so it presents, you know, new avenues of potential copyright infringement. And so we have received a lot of questions about how to do online worship while still maintaining compliance with copyright laws. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yes, and many of us rely on the religious service exemption, which covers different aspects of our live worship services in morning worship. Once we take that worship out of the building, though, through live streaming or recorded services posted to our church websites, there are new licenses and permissions that we need to broadcast that same material that we're used to performing live.
So our goal today is just to give you a brief introduction and an overview of standard license packages for live stream and podcast worship services, and also to answer the questions that were asked during last week's town hall.
Yes, and we know that this information will likely take up all of sort of the allotted time. So rather than answering any of your questions today, we encourage you to submit those to Andrew, and we will address any of those during our webinar entitled
Churches Don't Get Sued for Copyright Infringement, Do They? Part 2. Which will be in just over 3 weeks from today on April the 23rd.
Yes, so don't hesitate to send those questions in. Brief introduction. I know Andrew told you a little bit about us. I'm Kirsten Foyles. I am a lawyer by day and also a church musician by night and weekend. So I got my law degree at the University of Louisville, and I've been practicing, gosh, I'm not even sure now, about 22 years. And I just got my master's in music ed degree from Loyola with Kodai certification. So I handle our children and youth music at Community Presbyterian with Dr. Terri Sinclair.
Okay, and I'm a MM and DMA in choral conducting. I have 21 years in higher education, currently employed, as I mentioned previously, at Sandhills Community College in Pinehurst, North Carolina, and also serve as director of music at Community Presbyterian Church, also in Pinehurst, North Carolina. So we kind of feel like we're sort of a unique combination, the lawyer who's also a musician, and then, well, I'm just a musician, but we have done this presentation before, and you know, we're happy to do this today with a little bit different spin, focusing exclusively on online worship. But we both learned so much out of necessity through the process of preparing for these webinars in this digital age. So we are happy to be here today and to help answer the questions that you raised.
Yes, so copyright law hasn't exactly kept up with technology. The law is kind of, you know, slow to sort of add case law on all of these new platforms we're seeing. So we're going to give you the best advice that we can for how you can remain in compliance with your online worship now. So the most commonly asked question that we are getting from churches, especially those who are new to online worship, is what licenses are needed? So we wanted to begin by doing just a brief overview of the available licenses and what they cover.
Okay, so we're going to start with the main licensing agencies that you can obtain these licenses through. And we'll start with the one that most of us are probably most familiar with, which is CCLI, Christian Copyright Licensing International. So if you have a license with CCLI, it covers several different categories. We'll start with what's called storing lyrics, which means you can enter and store song lyrics on any computer for visual projection to assist with congregational singing. They have another license called printing songs, or component of the license, which is printing songs, which means you can print songs, hymns, and lyrics in your bulletins, programs, your liturgies, and song sheets, again, for congregational singing. There's another component called recording services. So the license allows you to record and capture your worship services, both audio and video, provided you are only recording live music, and that this is mainly for archival purposes. You have permission to make a few copies for members of your church if as needed, such as for your shut-ins. There's a making custom arrangements permission, which allows you to arrange, print, and copy your own vocal and instrumental arrangements for congregational singing. There is a projection or display permission, which allows you to make copies, both digital or physical, of copyright protected lyrics for projection or display during congregational singing. And finally, there is a translation of songs permission, which allows you to translate song lyrics into any other language for congregational singing. So again, most of you are, probably you have a license with them already and may already be familiar with everything I just said. Moving forward, this may be new information for some of us. It certainly was for me. So CCLI does have a streaming license add-on. So it's not something you can purchase as a separate license, but if you already have an account with them, you can add this on. So the Stream Services add-on allows you to post live recorded worship services on your church's website or other streaming platforms. And then there's a multi-platform add-on that allows you to stream your worship services to your favorite social media sites like Facebook Live and YouTube Live. And therefore, you have the potential to reach a global audience.
Yes, and you will probably see that we are using notes because we know that you cannot possibly write down what we're saying that's included in these licenses as quickly as we're speaking. So we have been very careful when we're giving you exactly what is covered that we've taken it right off of their website. So, so that's why we're doing that, so that you can then go and double check any of that. So thank you for CCLI. The other company that a lot of us use is One License. And One License pretty much offers parallel coverages to what Terri just talked about. So they have their music reprint license, which handles most of what she said for CCLI. And then they also have a streaming license add-on. The one different thing I'll point out with One License is that you can have an annual membership, which is what most churches do. But then they also have an event license. So if you're doing a retreat or something that's between 1 and 7 days long, you can get a license just for that period of time. And they also have a single-use license for one-day events. The one thing I want to mention as we're talking about these, having these licenses, okay, so that means you have permission to put these songs into your online worship. However, when we're talking about that, it includes those songs played and or sung by your church musicians. So none of these licenses cover taking the original song from the artist and using that recording to stream out in your worship service. That is a completely different license and not included in any of these standard church licenses, just so that you know that. Okay, there's also a company called Christian Copyright Solutions, and we should mention that CCLI and One License have maybe between 200 and 300,000 songs or so in each of their catalogs, I think. Christian Copyright Solutions has about 16 million in their library because they include all of the libraries of ASCAP and BMI. So if you want to include songs that are not within those smaller libraries, or especially secular songs, you can get what's called a worship cast license through Christian Copyright Solutions, and it will include using any of the songs in that huge library of theirs for anything that you're using in worship.
So they also have a license called Perform Music, and this is still with Christian Copyright Solutions, and it covers everything outside of the worship service for on-site facilities. So it includes if you have a vacation Bible school, if you have a coffee shop and you want to have some of this playing at your coffee shop, if you have a concert at your church or a retreat at your church, conference and seminars that are held on your church grounds, or for on-hold music on your church's phone line.
Yeah, you can have your choral best of on hold.
So, okay, so that's for question 1, and we're going to move on now to the second question that was submitted. So this question is asking regarding the changing landscape of copyright permissions during this COVID-19 outbreak. So a number of sacred publishers and licensing companies have offered discounts and free periods to assist churches moving from live worship to recorded worship. We cannot begin to name them all, but we'll highlight 2 as examples. And we encourage you, as Kirsten said a moment ago, to check with your publishers and licensing groups to see what they're offering.
Yes. So the publisher that I will use as an example is Choristers Guild. They are offering free copyright licenses now for mechanical license, church use license, synchronization license, and digital internet broadcast license. So the easiest websites to use for copyright permissions. So you just go, it says request a license. They've got each one of them, you know, a short explanation of each one. And you do still go and apply for the license. It's just that they're waiving the fee right now. It's important that you still apply for it, because what Choristers Guild is doing that's really cool is they are still paying their composers for those music usages. They're just waiving the fee to churches to help out. Most other publishers are doing something like this. So any anthem songs that you're using in online worship, check with your publishers, because you've probably got something just about like that.
Okay. Oh, and then one license, again, here's what they are offering. They have a free streaming license for new users with them. And then this is currently through April 15th. It's likely that it may be extended, but at the current time, this goes through April 15th. CCLI has discounted streaming licenses if you already have a CCLI account. So again, you know, for more information, just contact them directly.
And thank you. I should have mentioned that Choristers Guild is through April 30th. I don't want them on the hook for, you know, the rest of the year. So I should mention that date. Also, just so that you know, these are not expensive. Our church uses CCLI, and we added the streaming license for under $100. So this is very doable, even for smaller churches. The amount of it is based on your church size, like it is with your regular CCLI. Also, I did try calling both CCLI and One License to give you the most up-to-date information, because some of this is changing so frequently, and I wasn't able to get either of them on the phone. I think they are slammed right now. They did respond to me by email. So I do encourage you, if you have questions for them, to take advantage of their email request, because I think they're like the rest of us. They're just trying to stay afloat in taking care of everybody right now. Okay, question number 3. Another question that was raised last week was whether any public domain music is fine to broadcast as part of a recorded service. So Terri, is that true?
Yes, it is, but you need to first of all make sure it's the public domain version and not an arrangement of that public domain version. Also, make sure that your music team is singing or playing it. The Hallelujah Chorus is public domain, but we can't take a recording of another choir singing that and use it, because there are copyrights associated with the performance of that piece by that choir. I mean, I'd love to have the Morin Tabernacle Choir singing the Hallelujah Chorus in our worship service, but it would be a clear case of copyright infringement if I did not obtain the permission to use that.
Yes. But the key to all of the copyright questions is just get permission. So I'll give you an example. Our pastor found a choral version, or a choir that was singing a hymn on YouTube a couple weeks ago, and he came to me and he said, I'd like to use this. What can we do? And so I looked it up and I was able to contact the church and speak to their director of music. And we were able to get permission to use that. In fact, they were like, yes, you can use it. That would be wonderful. So especially right now, you're really finding that people are in a collaborative, what can we do to help? But so just, yeah, reach out for permission on that.
Yep. Okay, question number 4 is, we recorded our worship service and we did it in our worship space and we posted it at the regular time of our service. That keeps us within the religious services exemption, right?
No. So as soon as worship leaves the building, we are outside of our religious services exemption. So to give you some background on that, the religious services exemption allows churches to not have to obtain copyright provisions or copyright approval on some things when they are done during worship. So to give you an idea, section 110 states that the following things are not infringements of copyright. Performance of a non-dramatic musical work.
She means a song.
Or of a dramatic musical work.
She means a cantata or an oratorio.
Of a religious nature.
So your youth choir's performance of Shrek the Musical probably doesn't qualify.
Correct. In the course of services.
So it does not apply to any other activities in your church, such as fundraisers, social or educational functions.
At a place of worship or other religious assembly.
So this specifically excludes broadcasting or streaming because the viewers have to be gathered for that to be legal.
Exactly. So to give an example, when we buy an anthem and teach it to our choir, we can perform that live within our church service. But that same anthem performed that is now going outside of the building, we do need that broadcast streaming license. So we cannot rely on the religious services exemption once we head outside the doors. Okay, question 5. Someone else asked, if you stream a song that is covered by your one license streaming license, does the license number need to be shown on the webcast?
And you probably know the answer to that is yes. The podcast stream must include the following words at the end of the service or the website containing a link to the podcast live stream. So quote, and again, you can find this information on the website, but it says, permission to podcast/stream the music in the service obtained from one license, and then with your license number showing.
Yes, and CCLI, same thing. I know if you use that, you're used to doing those.
All right. Question number 6 says, if a church does not have a streaming license, do they have to limit instrumental prelude and postlude music to public domain music only?
Yes, or they have to obtain a license. So again, the religious services exemption gives churches the freedom. We're used to seeing an accompanist has a piano arrangement book of different preludes and postludes, and they play from there. Playing live from that is fine. It is within that exemption. But again, if you're playing an arrangement of that and then broadcasting it outside the building, you need to get a license for that. So the best way to handle that, if you want to just stay outside of that and remain safe, is to have your accompanist play preludes and postludes from the public domain.
Okay. All right. Question number 7. Our church has a CCLI for all our songs, but did I skip one?
Nope.
Okay. You're looking at me kind of cross-eyed.
I'm sorry.
Our church has CCLI for all our songs, but it's primarily just for Christian songs. We want to use a popular movie theme song. Is that copyrighted? And if so, how can we use it? So, you're correct that CCLI only covers 200,000 to 300,000 sacred songs. However, you can obtain a license called Worship Cast by Christian Copyright Solutions. We've already talked about that a little bit, which covers, again, as Kirsten said, about 16 million songs, both sacred and secular, many that are included in ASCAP and BMI.
Yes. Absolutely. Okay, another question we received is a common question. So for use of secular music in general from artists and movies, what can we use under the fair use policy? So I'm going to split that in two. So fair use policy, or the fair use exemption, it's one of the hardest things to describe. We talked about it in depth in our first copyright seminar because there are a number of conditions. The general rule to keep you safe is there is no fair use once you're broadcasting. So once you are streaming or doing online worship, there is no relying on fair use. So again, though, you can use that secular music. You just have to go through either one license, CCLI, or the worship cast that Terri mentioned. Now, the other part of that is wanting movie clips. So I don't know if any of you guys have pastors like our pastor, but he loves every now and then to pull a movie clip from, in a Hollywood movie to make a point during a sermon. How do we do that? Well, there is yet another license for that. The church video license, CVLI, covers movie clips from both Christian movie producers as well as most of the major Hollywood studios. So if you obtain that license, then your pastor can legally use those clips in those sermon illustrations that they love. And that is the best way to do that is to Google CVLI license, and then it brings you right to the site, and you can see everything you need to know about that one.
All righty. So the next question relates to YouTube. YouTube is really, really tough and tricky and extensive, and so we'll just say that right up front. When are they safe to use? Why do we need permission to use them? And how can we be sure we have permission from the correct party?
Okay, so YouTube is basically the Wild West of the internet. Anything goes. So when we were doing research on it, I think we found they're uploading 400 minutes of content per second, something like that. So while YouTube is trying to, make sure that they're looking through everything to verify that the proper person uploaded it, they don't catch everything. So we have to be very careful when we want to use clips from YouTube. So to use YouTube clips safely, you want to, number one, you want to make sure that you are downloading it or you're accessing it through the official channel. So for instance, if, most of the Hollywood studios, they have their own official channel. So you want to make sure you're getting it from their channel and not from some guy down the street who liked the movie and uploaded it. So make sure you get it from the original channel, and then you contact them for permissions. Again, if you're contacting the person who uploaded it and you're not going through the official channel, whether they give you permission or not, it's not valid. I'm just gonna be honest, it is not easy. It can be really difficult sometimes to try and make that determination as to whether you found that official channel or not. But I will tell you that, again, when you find it and you ask for permission, people are pretty good about granting it. I had found the song "Is He Worthy" before it was on the radio, before people knew it, and loved it. And so we wanted to play it at our youth service. So I just contacted the writers' people. I forgot who it was, but I contacted them and asked for permission, and they said, absolutely. I said, I'm going to use it on this day for this service, for this purpose. And they said, yes, you have our permission. Thank you so much for asking. So you're going to find that answer, more often than not. But do be careful about your sources on YouTube.
Yeah, and we said right at the outset of this that always ask for permission. Most of the time, I would say 9 times out of 10 at least, when you ask for permission to use somebody else's material, they're usually thrilled, to share it with you, as long as you go through the right channels, proper channels. As a matter of fact, Kirsten and I are also co-composers, have several choral pieces published, And I was on YouTube one time not too long ago and found a video of a song that we wrote and published. And it was a good recording, you know, so we weren't necessarily unhappy about that being out there, but we did not give them their permission to do that. So, you know, if they'd asked, we would certainly have said yes, and we're not going to sue them or anything like that. But it is important,
Yeah,
to make sure to ask permission.
yeah. And also the point being that most people in this industry are like, yes, please upload your children's choir singing the song, and that's wonderful, you know. So there's just there's so much spirit of how can we help one another out these days that it's just you can stay in compliance so easily.
And as a matter of fact, I was joking earlier about the Mormon Tabernacle Choir singing the Hallelujah Chorus. And in all seriousness, for our Easter worship service, I have asked them for permission to use a video of their choir singing the Hallelujah Chorus as part of our online Easter service. And so you go straight to the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and there's a form there, very simple for you to fill out. And I've submitted that form, and I'm waiting to hear back from them, and hopefully they will give us permission to do that.
Yes, and if they don't, we will not use it.
Absolutely.
All right, let's see. The last question that we have got here is, so this is another license that's just helpful to know about. This one is not particular to online worship, but it goes along with everything else we've been talking about. And that is called a rehearsal license. So we get asked all the time, can we share the publisher's demo recording with our choir so to help them learn it? Can we legally make practice file tracks and send them to our choirs? So Terri, can you tell us about that license?
Absolutely. And many of you probably are already aware that you can purchase those things from the website, the demonstration recordings and the practice files, which is a great and wondrous thing. So just to follow up with that, so for the sole purpose of learning and rehearsing songs, this particular license allows your church's music director and authorized personnel to copy and share these commercial audio recordings with your worship leaders, your musicians, your vocalists, your church's website, or from a streaming service in the following manner. You can obtain a rehearsal license from any of the licensing agencies we've already discussed. The one we'll describe right now comes from CCL Live. So their rehearsal license allows you to download and digitally distribute recordings such that the audio part can be captured, saved, and stored on a personal computer, a worship planning website, or similar data device for playback. And that basically means that, yes, you can make practice files for your church choir via email, flash drives, or again, your worship planning site. The second piece of that license says that you can make physical copies of recordings and distribute them on a CD, flash drive, or similar storage device. And then the third component, you can stream, which means digitally transmit, retransmit, distribute, and playback recordings in audio and or video form. And yes, you can share the demos from the publishers.
Yes, and this is just as a reminder to what we said at the beginning, that is for any of the songs that are covered by your CCLI license or your one license. If not, that permission comes from the publisher. So basically, in this new territory for all of us, you know, most churches want to do the right thing. And as church musicians, certainly we should model that to our groups and to our churches. And it's not as hard as people think, but it is a lot to wade through. And so we would encourage you to send questions. If there's anything that we haven't touched on today that you've got questions about that we could address for you in 3 weeks, we'll be happy to.
And we hope that some of this was helpful to you today because it's been, you know, I'm not a lawyer, so for me, this has, you know, been a process of learning for me as well. And I think the bottom line is let's try to abide by copyright law in every avenue of our music ministries.
Absolutely. So Andrew, we're back to you.
All right. Thanks very much, Terri and Kirsten, and thank you everyone for joining us today for our weekly town hall meeting. We do this every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. PAM is here for you, and this is one of the ways that in this unprecedented, unusual, even crazy time that we can be together and share ideas and thoughts. So I do hope that the session on personal well-being and self-care was helpful to you as well, in addition to these very important questions about copyright law. Thanks very much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.